Welcome to edition numero uno of Exor To The Max. It's Lee from Max, joined with...
Brandon here from Exor. How y'all doing?
Oh, it's fantastic to be with you, my friend. So we got to get things started off on the right foot, and that is origins of the hobby.
The hobby origin stories, yeah. Who out there remembers their first ever box of cards? Whether this be playing cards, Magic, something like that, Pokemon, or if it's sports cards. I was telling Lee here, actually, I have vivid memories of having a box of OPG Premier 91-92 under the Christmas tree. And yeah, it just stuck with me for life. I remember ripping that open and didn't know half the players, but oh man, was I excited.
Do you remember any cards specifically that you hit? Like that stood out, like I hit a Potvin.
I think it was a Yager. I think there was a Yager in there. Yeah,
that's his rookie year.
That would have been his rookie year. Yeah,
which is a bummer because you'd expect that to be worth out, and it's just like, oh man, it is not worth them. And that is one of the most misunderstood things in the hobby. Is cards from the early '90s are not worth the money you would assume.
They were so massively overprinted, right? And they didn't really have any serialized. They didn't have any different treatments on the cards. It was, here's our players. That's about it, right? So,
well, and it was also from what I remember, because what I do is I go to Dollarama, and they have those really cool mystery packs from time to time, and you pull a fresh pack out of there, a factory sealed pack. You're like, this is dynamite, and it's usually Pro Set, Premier, like you had said, and then you hit some of those cards, and you're like, man, this is dandy. So it takes you back there, but it's like, the most you're going to make is 40 cents unless you hit that random Lindros.
Yes.
Because Lindros can get you 20, 30, 40 bucks, whatever the heck it is, depending on the card, right? Like it's all over the map, sadly. It's hot and cold. It's hot and cold.
And then, of course, you think you add in grading now and things like this.
Big time.
It's definitely going to make an impact. But yeah, that's definitely my origin story. And then when I was about 11 years old, I got swept into Magic cards, and that's ultimately what led me to Exor.
And was it like cards in general that you got in? Because with the hobby, the cool thing with the hobby is it's everything.
So it was just strictly sports cards up until Magic. I remember going to McDonald's. Remember those great McDonald's cards where they had the All-Stars?
And the holographic.
Yeah, it was all clear cuts and everything.
I still have a Sundin and a Cujo.
Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, yes. I remember. I saw those in your binder.
Yeah, because, those are the ones you just don't throw those away. You forget about them. And then, because for me, similar for how I got into it, because we had I'm blanking on the set right now, but I remember it because it has the one that had the team cards. So you had, the card of, this is the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is the Boston Bruins, and then the back has the details. And my neighbor, Matt, he had them in a binder.
Was that the Score?
No, it was Pro Set.
Okay. Yep.
I believe it was Pro Set. Anyway, because they had Series 1, Series 2, but those were things I didn't understand at the time. So I was just like, I went to his house. He had the binder. So everything looked unreal. And then I was like, this is amazing. And then I'm a knick-knack guy. I love my cards. You know how much I love my cards. But knick-knacks for me is the same thing. So even when I was younger, I remember getting those. But the one that always stood out that was like, okay, I'm always going to collect was I got a Zamboni. And I still have it. It was like a white rose Zamboni for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I got it at a hockey tournament. It's still in the box. And as soon as I got that, I was like, what are these? And then you're the kid. You want to take it out, but I don't know why I had the presence of mind to not take it out at the time. So it's not sealed very well anymore. But that's kind of what got me into it. And then I realized I just like displaying stuff. So cards are sweet because of those really cool binders you guys
looking
have
all
now.
Around your room. Look at my cool things.
Oh, dude. Well, and what's funny is then you fall into that rabbit hole of I have a Toronto Maple Leaf rubber duck. So you know what I mean? If I see
one of those guys that if they slap a Buds logo on it, you'll just
I'm a sucker for it. I'm the easiest person to get for Secret Santa. Because
something Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, it's funny. You can ask any one of my relatives or anyone who knows me for more than 10 minutes. If there's a Golden Girls logo on it or a Toronto Maple Leaf logo on it, I want it. And it's wild because people are like, "What?" Like my boss at the radio station, he's like, "For one, you've heard of the Golden Girls, but now I'm like, it's hobby. It's a different kind of hobby because it's from a television show." I'm a huge Simpsons fan, huge Office fan, and there's a lot of hobby stuff that falls into that.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so interesting about it, whereas it's like, if it's got the Toronto Maple Leafs on it, if it's got the Golden Girls on it, I want it.
Just have B. Arthur and Sundin all over your house.
Oh, dude, that's a great combo. B and Sundin. So do you remember the first kind of major hobby acquisition? Was it with Magic?
Well, like I said, that box for Christmas, my uncle had got me that. That definitely was huge. But no, I do definitely remember getting my first ever box of Magic too. I would have been probably around 12. And yeah, just knowing like, holy cow, I spent so much money on this and there's so many cards in here. And just thinking back, I wish I would have had the wherewithal like you did to protect them and keep them for...
Well, why would you know at that age? Everyone says it all the time. And I remember vividly being... Do you remember the store Byway? Like B-I dash... It may have been more of an Ontario thing.
It might be an Ontario thing.
Okay, so it was kind of like... Dollarama, but one tier above, if that makes sense.
Kind of like a discounter store.
Kind of, yeah, sort of. And I remember being in Byway, and I remember we were standing at the impulse rack when you're on your way out, and I was looking at Pokemon packs, and they were $2.99 a pack. And I remember looking at it and being like, I don't want to spend a toonie on this. Now to know that a pack of that now costs what, $20,000 for a pack of that now?
Well,
because it was the first series.
I was about to say if it's a graded pack and it's first edition shadowless, you're looking at just for the sealed pack, probably a couple of grand.
That's what I'm saying, and I know it was that one because again I had friends who I held in my hands their holographic Charizards. I've held them in my hand. I know I have because I remember them, and even then it was a big deal. But it was a big deal as just a fan of Pokemon. It had nothing to do with, this is going to turn into...
I don't think anybody really did. I think it was just a really popular Pokemon, and he was actually good in the game. I actually remember having one myself. The very next day, I took it to my school and traded it for a Raichu, because I liked Raichu a little bit better.
And was it holographic?
Yep. Oh, yeah. It was a first edition Shadowless Charizard, left my hands for a first edition Shadowless Raichu. And I looked back at that deal, and I was like, I wish I would have learned my lesson.
I lost. Well, and that's what's so fascinating about where the hobbies come around is where people are like, I was stupid for doing this. You're like, okay, I was stupid for not investing in Amazon in 1994. Like, the thing about the hobby is it shouldn't be solely for financial gain. And I think that's what unfortunately has watered down the hobby is I have just as much fun pulling out of Series 1, which I've bought many times from the store, pulling a canvas retired card of Taidomi. It's a $2 card. It's a $2 card, and that makes my break. Whereas other people are like, unless I'm making big bucks.
I think we have social media to really blame for that.
True.
All these break videos and things like this, people are only seeing the good. Mm-hmm. They're not realizing that in between those good, there's going to be some lows, right?
Well, there's dud boxes, and that just happens, just as there are great boxes. And I remember, like, even in my younger days, that's where my mom would get really mad because, like, as me being the knick-knack guy, I went through a long stretch where I collected all the little NASCARs. Now, mind you, the NASCARs, I took them out of the box. I raced them. I did all that. I had a blast with them. And then I ended up gifting them away because they had like decent sentimental value to me. But the enjoyment I got out of it, it was used. It was good. You know what I mean? And we used to go to Myrtle Beach every year. So you're in NASCAR capital. My favorite driver was Bill Elliott. And one of the main reasons, he drove the McDonald's car. You're 9 years old. Of course you're going to love the guy who drives the McDonald's car. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, that's how it goes. So doing those kinds of things, I got the sheer enjoyment out of it. And
it's more of a tactile collectible too, right?
Totally.
You can play with it and collect it. Mm-hmm. Hockey cards, of course, you can flip through them. You can look at them all the time. But you have to. It's more of a collector thing for sure, where you're just like, look at my cool things.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I know with your house it's a little different because you got the wife and kiddos. Are you able to display much of your stuff?
Not necessarily, no. We also, on top of having the wife and two kids, I've got 6 cats.
They'll get in everything.
Yeah, so putting things out. We've got a couple of Funko Pops hanging about. My daughter has a big collection of things in her room because she can keep her doors shut and things like that.
Cool.
And I've got a few statues from my days at GameStop, but other than that, no, not really.
What does she collect, your daughter?
My daughter collects Funko Pops, but she doesn't strictly stay with Funko Pops. If it's a small figure of any kind of vinyl,
very cool.
She collects it. Yeah. And
does she stick to a theme or just anything?
She's eccentric. It's kind of all over the place.
So I love that. And that is what I find. That's why I'm weird. Everyone in the hobby is weird, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Maple Leafs and Golden Girls.
No doubt, right? But like everyone has their weird little niches. And it's like, for me, what is missing from the hobby, I find, is people like your daughter who's like, I just like everything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this just catches my eye. I like it. Whereas me, that could be really cool, but I'm not going to pick it up because it doesn't have the logo on it that I'm looking for. Whereas your daughter, she's like, that just looks neat. I don't even care if it's from the Marvel universe. I don't care if it's from Sports World. I don't care where it's from. I just think it's neat.
I often compare her to Ariel from The Little Mermaid there, who just collects all the kinds of trinkets and everything.
The fork.
Just, the fork. Yeah, just like, ooh, this is shiny and cool, and it doesn't match anything, but it's shiny and cool.
Well, but that's honestly, that's pure. Like, I mean, and that's what I think, is that probably what got you into just the sheer enjoyment of it?
Basically that's it. I like just things that catch my eye. There's plenty of times where I've just went out of the way to be like, you know what? I would have normally never gotten this type of thing, but for some reason on this moment, on this day, it's calling to me. I need to have it.
Well, and that makes sense. And me, because it's funny, my family, my sister and mom are minimalists. They hate the stuff that I have around because they're dust collectors. You know what I mean? It's not that they don't like stuff. They're just very minimalistic in that regard.
Yep.
So they'll be like, why do you have all those? They collect dust. My Gramps, who is an absolute beauty, he's going to be turning 90 soon.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, or else just turned 90. I have to remember. It might have just been his 90th birthday. Come to think of it. Good old Gramps there. He collected John Deere tractors. And he had a room. And I remember when I was a kid walking to the room and just being in awe. It was like, shelf beyond shelf beyond shelf beyond shelf of just John Deere tractors. And he had physical ones as well, like a proper tractor. But I remember when we were kids, he had specific ones he would leave in the other room that kids were allowed to play with. Because the other ones, you're not playing with those. I have a few in my basement now because he sold his collection a few years back. And then he kept a few that he still likes to have around. But like, I remember thinking, when I grow up, I need a room like that where I can display all my stuff. And I'm starting to move towards that now. And it's just one of those where I lived in an apartment when I was back in Ontario. And it's really hard to decorate an apartment because in every room, like your kitchen now looks like you got 15 Toronto Maple Leaf action figures there. You know what I mean? Like they're neat to have displayed, but it's just, it doesn't fit. Now I have the proper canvas.
Got the space.
Yes, to display all of my nerd stuff. And I know with some people like, no, I want my 10 Funko Pops and that's all I need. You know, like that's my little corner for that. Me, it's like every corner of that basement that I have that makes sense.
Well, it's funny because, the reason why people like to have these dust collectors, as it were.
Heck yeah, Mom.
It's when you look around your dwelling, you want to see things that make you happy.
Exactly.
And that's why, like the John Deere, there's people who have giant Coca-Cola collections and everything in their house is Coca-Cola.
My friend Scott is he has a Coca-Cola tattoo.
Oh,
he has a bottle of Coca-Cola on his calf. And I remember I asked him.
Commitment.
Oh, dude, man. Again, like my very first tattoo, it's already drawn up for me. I do not have any tattoos. When, and I do say when, because it's going to happen when the Leafs win the Stanley Cup, the tattoo I'm getting is Betty White holding the Stanley Cup wearing a Leaf jersey. I have that done up. And I will have that tattoo put on my body when they win the Cup. They won it many times in her lifetime, never in mine. But that for me,
you got to tempt fate. You got to get it before they win the cup, and then you look like a premonitionist.
Yeah, well, that's the hard part.
See, I knew it. I knew it.
With my luck, I'd die one day before they win the cup with that tattoo, and they'd be like, well, like Betty White when they released that Time magazine of her 100th birthday, and she died 13 days before she turned 100 or whatever it was. It's like, my gosh, you know what I mean? But I like your style. Because do you have any tattoos?
I do. I have a couple of tattoos. I got one on my back and one on my shoulder. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, because I don't have a tattoo. So that's why it's kind of one of those like, you know what I mean? Where I'm not scared of getting it by any stretch of the imagination. It's just, that's the one I know I want to get. Because you go through that era when you're like 16 to 18, where like...
Well, just to warn you too, once you get one... You'll probably be like, oh, I got a hankering for another one. You'll have Carlton the bear in there.
Now Carlton's holding the cup. You're like, what the heck is going on? Yeah, because the feeling is addicting, eh?
Yes.
It's like an addictive pain, if that makes sense.
My wife's more addicted to it than I am, for sure. But once you get your first one and it heals up and it's looking all nice, you're like, oh, dang, that was cool. And it didn't hurt that bad. You start to convince yourself.
Yeah. It's like with... Okay, not comparing the two, but like with women in childbirth, like I'm never having another kid. They're like, we should have another kid. I'm in no way, shape, or form.
I have a feeling that's a little bit more emotional and hormonal.
I understand, and I'm not at all implying, getting a tattoo is the same as childbirth, but in the sense of you overlook
Yes.
the negative aspects of it after the fact, and it makes you looking forward to the process again, if you will. Because
until they get at that exact moment again, and they're just like, no, I'm not doing this again.
You did this to me. You did this to me. Now, is there, I guess, because the first one is, hobby things that got you into it. Is there any other, do you remember your favorite item that you've ever had?
Yo-yos. I used to love yo-yos. Oh, man.
Dope.
The ones with the ball bearings that could just keep spinning and things like that. Yeah, I fell into that hype train real hard as a kid. And then as I started to grow a little bit older, it went from yo-yos to guitars. I've got a lot of guitars.
Really?
Yeah.
How many guitars do you?
13.
Wow.
Yeah, 13 guitars.
What's your favorite guitar that you own?
I bought a Paul Reed Smith 24 just a little bit after my mother passed away. With some of the money that I had inherited, and that's definitely most sentimental for sure.
So a living tribute as well.
I don't play it nearly as often as I'd kind of like to. I play more acoustic, but yeah, that Paul Reed Smith is really nice.
That's I still have two, but I have to take them into the shop. Like I have my first guitar that I ever bought. It was like a.
You probably moved over with them, eh?
Oh, big time. Yeah. So I had like an Area Pro 2, which wasn't great. It was enough that it was like $200 that I bought off somebody to learn how to play. And then years later, one of my favorite bands, they're from New Jersey. They're together, but they're not functioning. They're called 40 Below Summer. They're a new metal band out of New Jersey. And a friend of mine, he had an album that was produced by the lead singer of 40 Below Summer. And years later, their guitarist got a guitar from Max, is the guy's name, and it belonged to the guitarist of 40 Below Summer. And years ago, he had to sell it because he was going through whatever. I ended up buying it off of him. So one of my favorite albums of all time is called Invitation to the Dance by 40 Below Summer, and songs off that record were written with that guitar.
Cool.
So like indirect, like I couldn't tell you which ones it was, but I have in the meantime reached out to the guitarist. His name's Jordan Plingos. And I was like, do you remember this guitar? And he's like, oh, dude, super lightweight. I loved that thing. I was wondering where, he's like, didn't Max have it? I'm like, he did. And Max sold it to my buddy. And he's like, oh, that's wild. That's a great guitar. And the guitar itself is cool. But what I love the most is the case. Because on the case, they have two neon orange pieces of tape. And on the one side, it says ESP written in Sharpie. And then the other side, it says Jordan Stage Right.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, oh man, like I gotta get it. I gotta take it into like Long and McQuaid or something because it needs some work done to it. I just unfortunately haven't picked up the guitar in a while, and I had an electronic drum kit years ago.
I think Most Wanted also has a guitar luthier as well. If you want to do that, I can look into that for you. For sure.
Dope. That'd be sweet. Yep, yeah, because that's right next to you guys.
Absolutely, it is. Yep.
Wicked. Is there anything else that jumps out for you as like personal memorabilia that you may have?
Like I said, I had to mention the yo-yos. I got heavy into the yo-yos for sure. And then,
do you still have any?
Guitars. No, unfortunately not. I did have one that I moved here with, but my daughter got a hold of it when she was about 2. And
knotted it right
up. And it was just like, I loved this thing, but unfortunately it was not able to be salvaged, as it were.
It has served its purpose. I was going to so around that time, was it like $20 to $40 a yo-yo? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, about then. Yep.
Because I remember it was it Dexter? I'm trying to remember the name of like what was considered the cool
the brand.
And I thought it started with a D. Duncan.
There was Duncan yo-yos.
Duncan, yeah, that was one where you were the cool kid. You were like the cool kid in the playground if you could make it stall and then do like the Eiffel Tower and the pendulum, all that, and then everyone thought they were going to be pro.
Yomega was another one. The Fireball. Yep.
Fireball, thank you. Yep. That was the one, yeah, because I remember there was a buddy who had like this really nice blue one. Blue's my favorite color, obviously ties into the Leafs anyways. But it was like, it didn't glow in the dark, but when you threw it, the way that it spun, it kind of changed the color a little bit, so it made it look like it was glowing. So it was like really, because you'd be sitting there at recess. When you're, and then I guess it would not do us justice to not bring this up on the very first pod.
Pogs?
There, boom. He's already got the same flipping head we're using right here. Oh. Do you remember your Pogs?
Oh, absolutely. I actually like the Slammers more than the Pogs.
Oh, heck yeah, you do. Yeah. And what was crazy was it was our first touch into gambling. You know what I mean? Like it was recess, and you're like, and then did you guys have this rule where you grew up? You'd like slide in an 8-ball one, and it would mean if you're playing for keeps, you'd have to give up 8 additional.
No, I didn't.
You guys never.
Oh, that's cutthroat.
Oh,
man.
dude. Okay, and here's what's nuts. Because for those who know, they know. And it would be like, are we playing for keeps? Because there's always 2 or 3 that you would put in your pile to flip, right? And they would usually sandwich in the middle an 8-ball. And if you flipped the 8-ball, you got to pick 8 Pogs out of their tube. And what was crazy was there were some that had multiple 8 balls on the actual Pog itself. So you'd be like, you actually owe me 32 Pogs.
Where did you go to school?
Oh, dude, Grandview Public. We were cutthroat, man. Grandview Tigers can be found spreading happiness around unless we are ripping you off of your Pogs. And then there was like the slammers that were like, they had like the notches.
Yep.
So it was like, dude, you can't use that slammer. Like, you kidding me, man? And then people would make their own. Did you ever have people like,
absolutely?
Oh, I kid you not. I have one Pog in my personal collection right now. I have one Mike Gartner Pog that somebody gifted me like 5 years ago.
I was wondering if it was going to be hockey.
Oh, it was. Oh, yeah. It was just, and it was like random. Mike Gartner. I'm like, thank you so much. I have it in my Toronto Maple Leaf mini hockey mug. You know,
oh, cool.
Because you got to rock it like that. But so your favorite slammer that you're talking, do you remember what it was?
It was one of those ones with the notches on it.
Oh,
yep, absolutely.
So
I got so upset because one of my teachers ended up taking it from me, being like, "Oh, you can use this as a weapon."
Oh, I was just gonna say, because some of them were really thick too.
Yeah,
like you could buy the ones that were kind of like the Pog branded ones that were really thin slammers and still like that. So it was like the double a width of a Pog.
It was,
but then there were ones that were like
ones.
Then there were ones that were like literally. I remember I had a buddy who he had one. It was like a shark. So like the way that it was notched, it looked like the teeth.
Oh, cool.
So it was like, oh man, he'd like pull it out and be like, "We're playing for keeps." Like, no, we're not playing for keeps on this one. You know, do you have a favorite Pog set that you remember?
Not necessarily. Like you said, I remember the 8 balls. There was the skulls with the snakes coming out of them. There was fire ones. And I
like, did you do the Star Wars or?
Not necessarily that I can think back. A lot of mine were the official Pog ones. Yeah, and it's just so funny that such a cool collection just started from milk caps. Like,
totally. Oh man, and I remember the hype of it. And I remember like when you would go in and they had like 5 different racks that had all the different kinds of Pogs. And until they started introducing the themed ones, you were just going off of designs. You weren't going off weren't going off of that's basketball, that's hockey, that's Spice Girls and all that kind of stuff. Because that was that time where everything that they could slap Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls, and NSYNC on, they would do that. And Pogs fell right into that wheelhouse. Do you remember when you got
late 90s?
Do you remember when you got rid of all your Pogs?
Like I said, it was the beginning of the end for me when my favorite one got taken, and then I just kind of fell out of love with it. And I think I might have sold them all at a garage sale or something.
That's how they all went away. That is how they all went. It was always the garage sale. Our town always had like that one day where it was garage sale day, and you'd put everything out on the sidewalk. You'd wait, people would go by, and you would just watch your memories walk away. And then you're disconnected. And now you look back on it, you're like, I feel sorry for the guy who let 15 holographic Charizards walk away.
Well, you know that's why it's important to get people onto hobbies now, get them into young. And now with the power of the internet and social media, kids even are understanding, I should probably save this. When I'm a grown up, this might be worth a lot of money.
It becomes an investment.
And it literally starts, their brains start to acclimate to, I'm going to keep this for investment's sake.
And the cool thing is you can still tie into the non-investment standpoints of it. You've just found that kind of where it's like, like Beanie Babies, same kind of thing for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, I have a Princess Diana Beanie Baby, I can retire. Like you're misunderstanding how to evaluate. And those are things we're going to talk about moving forward, is how to properly evaluate things. Because if you don't know, it's completely understandable, but some people think they're sitting on $1 million. They're sitting on 35 cents.
Well, like we said earlier in the conversation, with those 91, 92 hockey cards, somebody opens a Yager and they're just like, okay, I'm set. And it's just like,
I'm going to retire. On what? but then also there's those other things where you don't realize what you're holding on to. And I'm a firm believer in the hobby market too. I don't want to see somebody getting ripped off, where if you don't realize that you have something great, you should know what you have.
Absolutely.
And that's just as equally important, where some people are like, I don't really care. And I'm like, well, you should, because for one thing, if you don't want that card, that is fine. But you're giving away a $200 hockey card to somebody. And
There's definitely bad actors out there too.
That's what I'm saying. Oh yeah, whatever, I'll take it. I mean, it might fit in with what I'm trying to collect. But that's what's great about having stores like you guys around for advisors, and you'd hope people roll in. And I love just chatting about it because I've gotten to know a lot being around great sports shops and hobby shops in my day. There was stuff I didn't know 5-6 years ago that I've gotten incredibly educated about. And who would have thought that it stemmed from literally just opening up that first pack in 91 Premier. And have this roller coaster leading us to where we are now. But that's why we got to keep building, right?
Well, absolutely. And it's good to have stores like mine that we can assess cards, we can evaluate cards, we can give people any kind of information they need so that if there is a bad actor that's trying to take advantage of them, they can have a second thought and be like, oh, wait a minute, actually, hold on. You know, Brandon told me that this card was actually worth this much. Why are you trying to pick it up off me for a quarter of that or whatnot?
Or why are you misleading me as to the type of card it is?
Absolutely.
Because that's something that happens all the time too. And I mean, I've been lucky. I'm sure I've had some bad beats in my day, and I'm sure there's been times that I won significantly in the long run. It's just that's what's fun about the hobby, and it's great that it's led us here. But it's been great today talking about what got us on this path.
Everybody's got a hobby origin story out there, so. I'd love to hear more people's.
Well, and I hope everyone liked ours. So, as people come in, as long as you're not super busy, I'm sure you'll be happy to chat people's ear off.
Absolutely, always.
Perfect. Well, we should wrap things up with that. Then for Epic, the intro to Exor To The Max with the two handsome hosts that we have in Brandon and Lee. That is one of many with us here. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one.